Get prepared. We are entering deep and dark waters of SHTF. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Prepared Mind channel. I tell you what, it is incredible. Things are getting very serious, not just in the world of SHTF, but in the world of mental loss of intelligence. We have the political left, the regime. They have the power and authority at the federal level, and they're being puppet mastered. They're being controlled. They're being dominated. They're being led by an agenda that is absolutely evil and I dare I say dangerously corrupt and ignorant. It is a complete and abject lie coming over here from the left, from these fascio-Marxist people in DC. Now, here's what we're going to lead off with. The Attorney General of the United States, Garland Merrick, nerd extraordinaire, says this: we will not tolerate violence. Okay, that almost sounds intelligent. Good job. It would be great if the federal government would not tolerate violence. Right? We will not tolerate violence except for violence. This is how his speech should have turned right at that. As soon as he said violence, he should have said this: except for violence against, or violence by, committed by, acts of violence committed by BLM and Antifa. Because then it's okay to threaten assault, violence, to burn flags, and commit arson against private and government property. Because then it's okay to commit acts of violence against, public property like police stations, federal courts, cars, other buildings. It's okay to commit acts of violence as long as it includes assaulting normal people, police, looting, shutting down highways, maiming people, and ultimately murdering anyone that suits your fancy at the time. But don't threaten anyone. Don't anyone threaten to threaten an abortion clinic or anyone trying to get into one in Texas, right? The right to murder should never be interfered with, according to Garland Merrick, Attorney General of the United States of America, the political left. The right to murder should never be interfered with, or Camel Toes and Biden and Garland, and they're gonna come out and do some more murdering of their own. This is absolutely incredible, folks. It is getting very serious. I want you to see it. I want you to think about it. I want you to understand it so that we, folks, we can see who the enemy is. Right? All government acts, by the way, are acts of violence. All government acts are acts of violence because they only have one way to enforce it. And that is with a law enforcement officer enforcing it with a pistol on their hip and the threat of arrest and then prosecution and then jail, right? Even taking money that the government has and giving it to someone else can only occur after an act of monetary theft, commonly referred to as tax collection. Even that requires violence and threats of violence. Government hands someone some money, looks innocent, but how did they get that money? It was an act of violence. So basically what we're learning here from the Democrats is they're going to continue all acts of violence in the government, and they're going to prohibit acts that they don't agree with. They're going to allow acts of violence that they do agree with. Now, here's what they won't allow. Quote, we will not tolerate violence against those seeking to obtain or provide reproductive health services. There you go. We will tolerate violence committed by Antifa and BLM as long as it suits our political agenda, he should also say. Now, I believe the heartbeat law in Texas says that if a baby inside a woman's tummy has a heartbeat, that person is no longer allowed to obtain an abortion. There you have it. So, how does Texas enforce this? In other words, is this an act of violence? Texas enforcing their law, saying you're not allowed to murder someone because they're now officially alive. The government recognizes life as the time when a heart starts to beat. Well, is an act of murder in broad daylight in the middle of a street? That's not a secret, is it? It's an act of murder. If someone is murdered in a doctor's office and people on the street can't see it, is it still an act of murder? Right? If a doctor, say, uses a needle and injects somebody with toxins and they die, is that an act of murder? And if a woman goes into an abortion clinic and seeks to get an abortion and her baby that she's carrying has a heartbeat, is that not an act of murder done in secrecy? So how is it exposed? And that's going to be a little tricky for the enforcers, the government violence of Texas, trying to stop this. So once again, we will not tolerate violence against those seeking to obtain an abortion or seeking to provide abortions. I love how they still call it reproductive health services. They won't even come out and say the word because they know, folks, it's not an abortion if it's a living being. Right? It's murder. And they just changed the name altogether to reproductive health services. So this is his statement in full. The department, meaning the Attorney General's office, will provide support from federal law enforcement when an abortion clinic or reproductive health center is under attack. We have reached out to U.S. Attorney offices and field offices of the FBI in Texas and across the country to discuss our enforcement authorities. We will not tolerate violence, blah, 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 but we will tolerate violence against unborn babies who cannot scream for help. And we will continue to try and provide and fund very quiet, secret, out of the public places where these terrible acts of murder can occur. And we'll use our police power in the federal government to ensure that people can continue to murder in the privacy of a doctor's office. See, they don't want to use the nasty words, which is exactly what this stuff is. Now, we've gone over the basics of this. And you're like, John, it's very important news. Thank you for the perspective. Shit, it's the fan. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry about that. The government that is run by the Obama administration with camel toes waiting to assume the seat of power any moment now. If Joe Biden slips on a banana peel, falls down some stairs, gets tangled up in a tricycle, gets snow cone and ice cream cone stuck to him, and then dies of cerveza bug because someone didn't get their Jim Jones juice. Okay. What's important to look at here is violence is okay if it's committed by the federal government. Violence okay if it's committed by the federal government and it serves an agenda. Violence okay if it's not done on the street and it's done in private. What are they threatening us with, folks? What are we seeing in Australia? Health camps where people who have an illness are taken, whether they like it or not. Or if someone violates the government's demands that they go to a specific place, their home, and stay there as long as the government says. In other words, you don't own yourself. You can make no decisions on your own behalf. The government owns you. And if you violate those rules, folks, they can take you away. They're already doing that in Australia. We're going to have a lot to talk about in the next broadcast, by the way. A lot of shit is already going down. A lot of shit. And I don't seem to get any breaks. Nature of the business, folks. And I know it. I accepted the role. I accepted the responsibility. I can deal with this shit. But here, if this happens in the United States, you're taken to a health camp. If you refuse, if things get worse, if there's so many people, we can't have these nice health hotels, then how about a nice luxurious stay in barracks-like conditions with chain link fences at a FEMA camp? Now, is murder okay according to the United States government? Yes, it is. As long as it's done in a quiet manner, out of the eye of the public, and we use sanitized terminology like reproductive health services. See where we're going with all this? People, the federal government is going to use federal law enforcement when health is under attack. You know, in this story's case, it was reproductive health being under attack. How about the greater good, the public health? When the federal government decides federal law enforcement, you know, FBI offices in the field and other enforcement agencies that can be conscripted to assist, because they're not going to tolerate violence against the healthy people in society. So they'll commit their own acts of violence to protect public health and make sure you and I go to a safe place, a FEMA camp, where you can be quietly murdered in the name of all that's good. You see, it's bad for a healthy baby to come into the world. So if you need to, you can murder that baby. It's bad to have a person thinking they're healthy in the world when others think you're unhealthy because you've refused to get the jungle juice, the Jim Jones juice, the zombie juice. If you've refused that, you are a health risk and a threat, and you're the danger because you're healthy. You're a healthy person running around not dying, and they can't have that. Folks, it is upside down, bizarro world. These people are dangerous. This is getting serious. And it's good to see states like Texas stand up and say, hey, no, that's not how it works. Someone's got a heartbeat, they're alive. Folks, if you have a heartbeat, you are alive and you are free. That is your right. My right, our right. It is not a collective right. It is not a right that Merrick Garland or Joe Biden or Camel Toes or some bankers somewhere else or some corporate schmucks. It's not a right that they can take away or a right that they control, a right that they can limit. See, that's a privilege. I don't exist by privilege. I exist by right. And that is the argument that is being made in the minds of people everywhere when they decide, can I do what I want? Or do I have to listen to the government? Do I succumb to the pressure from corporations and jobs, right? Companies, my job saying you're going to get fired unless you behave properly. This happens every single time in history when tyrannical government wants its way at all costs, up to and including threatening violence. We will not tolerate violence against those seeking to maintain freedom. No, that's not what they're saying. Okay, that's what the government should be saying, is we will not tolerate violence coming from those who want to take the rights of others. Isn't that amazing? It's totally amazing that they don't threaten violence against people who are threatening violence against us. Instead, they want more violence. Every little thing they do, folks, is a progressive step towards tyranny. And the only way to stop tyrants is to remove them from office, one way or another, permanently. It's coming. Get prepared. Chance favors the prepared mind, folks. It favors the prepared mind. Food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense. Have a plan. Understand what the hell is going on. It doesn't happen in a day, folks. It takes days, weeks, months, and even years for this stuff to progressively pile up. And then one day you wake up and go, I don't even have the right to live. We're getting close. You don't have a right to go outside. You don't have the right to go to the store. You can't go to the beach. You can't do this. You can't do that. You got to do this with your job. You can't go shopping. You can't get health care. Oh, shit, we've got so much to talk about. The government can take you away. You don't have a say in it. Oh, yeah, Second Amendment. Second Amendment. I guess that's going to be a problem here for Merrick Garland and the rest of the jackbooted Nazi thugs. Semper Fi.